Shaastra 2023 and the fourth lecture of the Shaastra Spotlight Lecture Series, presented by M2P FinTech. Adding to our bigger and better lineup this year, we are extremely honored to have Ms. Vineeta Singh with us for a fireside chat. Ms. Vineeta Singh is the CEO and co-founder of the first digital cosmetic company, Sugar. Starting from its early sales being just under INR 2 crore per year to INR 2 crore in just a day is a truly stellar achievement. Ms. Vineeta, appears as a judge for the widely popular television program Shaastra India. She is also a co-founder of BTech, a monthly subscription service that provides women with a selection of beauty products from a novel range. And please switch off your mobile phones or turn it on silent mode. We're glad to start over with this question answer for the 5 seconds.
Hello! Before we start, I have to request you to let all of those waiting outside come in, please. It is like my campus.
You're very sweet like sugar.
Sorry?
You're very sweet like sugar.
Absolutely. Sugar jokes 3-4 more times before the same. All the sharp jokes, sugar jokes, word plays, please think of them. You can crack them in your Q&A.
ये सही था भाई ये बहुत सही है आई एम आउट इनका थोड़ी है
Adil has already said nobody gets
शास्त्र का तो है
you barely get to breathe and if you leave your space somebody else is coming in so stay right there till 5 o'clock. Are you letting them in?
Yeah. So welcome Ms. Vineeta to IIT Madras.
Are you letting them all in? All of those who are standing outside?
They cannot connect.
When do you guys study? Looks like you're watching Shark Tank all the time.
Watching you,
How
mom.
many of you watch Shark Tank? I mean Shark Tank India, not the US one. There are, I think, 3 or 4 ex-IITM companies this year, and last year there was just 2.
So as you can see, you don't need much of an introduction here. So your journey just like started right here on this campus. Did you ever imagine yourself in this position almost after 20 years in front of all these students in CLT, sharing your insights and your experience? Did you ever imagine about this kind of a situation when you were studying here?
Not 18 years by the way.
Around this.
too specific
When you are approaching 40 every year is like a big deal. So don't add 2 years to my age, please. I definitely never imagined getting back here and of course with so much love. I think 95% of this love is courtesy Sony Television, so let me give them credit for that. But yeah, I feel like it was just yesterday that I was here in this play called Puss in Boots in this inter-hostel festival. I don't remember what it was called, but I was representing Sharavati and they... Yoo-hoo! And Saryu. In fact, ours was the transition year when we moved from Saryu to Sharavati, so I've lived in both the hostels. And I remember they wanted a boy to play a character in Puss in Boots, and so I overacted my way to glory because there was no option in the girls' hostel, and the seniors just told us, "Oh, you're the tall one, so you become the boy." And so it was right here, and I definitely, IITM is home for me. I've come back here to have juice at Guru Nath, which now doesn't exist. I feel very bad about it. Many times since I graduated, and this is of course the campus where I miss every part of it, from, of course, my room 242 in Sharavati to the elect engineering block to the amazing badminton courts at SAC. I don't know. Yeah, the entire inter-IIT experience, and of course, I mean, this is like also the campus where I fell in love for the first time. I got drunk for the first time from my first. So many memories. Of course, the long walks from GC to gate, water tank. I don't know if it's still a thing. So yes, I'm very grateful, and I feel that I came here to do a BTech in electrical engineering. That didn't go very well. I had like probably a 7.43 CGPA by the end of it, which was like below average. So yeah, there's hope. All of you backbenchers. Still shaking hands, yeah, of course. But not if you're like not passing, okay? I somehow passed all the courses. And I thought I will do a BTech in electrical engineering, but I think what ended up happening was more of a BTech in self-awareness, self-discovery. I think first time asking those questions, what is the meaning of life, to making world domination plans, it all happened here on the IITM campus. In fact, there's a story around it so I grew up in Delhi, and the reason I actually chose IIT Madras, in spite of the fact that elect engineering department at that time, I don't know if it's right like that right now, but at that time, elect engineering was really hardcore. It was like one of the toughest elect engineering departments in the country. And I always thought I wanted to do mechanical engineering because I love physics. But I grew up in the AIMS campus, which was literally 2 kilometers from IIT Delhi. And the only thing I wanted out of my college was to be in a hostel, because, just figure out what I want from life. Because till then, everything was like, your parents tell you, oh, okay, go to IIT, and then sab theek ho jayega, and then you come to IIT, and that time you're like just clueless about everything, and you're hoping that you'll come here and see what everybody else is doing. And then figure out what you want to do with your life, because you have absolutely no sense of conviction of your own. That's how, but the only thing that I knew was that I wanted to be in a hostel, and Madras was as far as it gets from Delhi. So I had to sacrifice my aloo paratha and rajma chawal, and like I was telling him today, we used to have this mess which was in the hostel where, in steel buckets we used to get like rasam, sambar and rice every meal of the day, and but it was also worth it. And those rare moments when you could like save up money and go to Nandini and have paneer butter masala used to be like such a thing to look forward to, so I wouldn't change any of that. And of course, on my first flight here, incidentally, I was sitting and like 2 or 3 rows away from me, I heard somebody introduced to somebody else saying, I work at IIT Madras. And I was going by myself, and it was the first time in a new city, so I got excited that to find like somebody who's mentioned the word IIT Madras. So I swapped my seats with the person who was sitting next to this person. I went and sat next to him, and I was like, I am joining IIT Madras. And as it turned out, it was Professor Junjunwala, who at that time was heading the department, and he had this reputation of being like a really strict prof. And that's when I realized that the Delhi-Chennai flight is actually 2 hours and 45 minutes.
It's 3 hours now.
And of course he started by asking me, oh, electrical engineering, so what is the difference between analog and digital? And then he asked me, so do you know how the tube light whatever works and stuff like that? And I remember at that time, fumbling my way through those answers. And then he asked me, so what do you really want to do? And like I said, I never thought about this, right? I always did what my parents said or everybody else was doing, and which is what I think it gets all of us into engineering. I don't know if it's changed now. But so I started giving some garbage about wanting to, make a difference, make an impact in the world and all of that, which he just tore through. And then he's like, no, but what will make you feel that you've really accomplished something, like, a few years down the line, etc. And then I said, honestly, I don't know if it's the right thing to say, but I want to be rich. Of course, Professor Junjunwala didn't take that too well, but he helped me, think through what that meant. And at the end of the flight, he gave me this advice saying that, I think you're really clueless about what you want to do, and IIT is a great time to figure out where you want to take your life. And one of the things that you might want to consider is entrepreneurship. Now, that was the first time actually this word was mentioned, and that was the first time I went back and started thinking who are entrepreneurs and what it really is, because at that time, I don't know if it's changed now, but 85% of our batch used to app. Do you guys still app? No? That's, go for NMS. So it was like a thing. You join IITM, you do 4 years, get an 8-pointer, and then you app. And I was very clear that I didn't want to app. And there was no other career option that seemed to be available here. And entrepreneurship definitely wasn't one of those things that anybody who got out of an IIT did. But yeah, that was the first time. All of these things, of course, are hindsight when you start connecting the dots. And I was also just telling him that Shaastra was a startup back then. So it was in its 3rd or 4th year. And I had the chance to, at that time it was so small that I got a chance to become a part of the core team. I was PR. PR wasn't a big deal back then, so that's how I got through. And I remember at Shaastra we called, at that time, one of the only venture capitalists in India, this gentleman called Mahesh Murthy. And he had come here, and so he was here, sitting here in CLT and talking about, he just started talking about, shoes, right? I always found that very interesting, because I used to play and I used to, run. And so he said, if you look at a shoe, you buy some, a lace out of cotton, how much will it cost you? And then he went into, okay, how much will the leather cost you? And then how much will the sole cost you? And then he started building up, and then we came to like a number saying that, okay, 150 rupees so far. And then he said, okay, and now you cut a swoosh shape out of leather. And how much does that cost? Okay, 10 bucks more, so it comes to 200 rupees total. And then he said, yeah, but when you put the swoosh on it and you sell it as Nike, it sells for like 5,000 bucks. So what is that 5,000 minus 200 rupees, right? That's 4,800 rupees is the power of brands. And so these are the reason I'm sharing with you. All of this at that time seemed like something interesting, but I never connected the dots. But in hindsight, I go back and some of those moments happened here, which later started making sense, because in 2015 we decided to attempt to create India's largest cosmetics brand, and think about things. What is 4,800 by 5,000? That's the gross margin of Nike, right? But at that time it seemed like an alien concept, but you go back and think about those moments and then you connect the dots, it all makes sense. So for all you know, one of you is going to be sitting here 18 years later, having become an entrepreneur, and I really hope that this sesh conversation or any of the others you've had over the last 24, 48 hours is one of those dots that helps you connect back.
Pretty much fun in life, and you started talking about your entrepreneurship journey, how it started. So let me slightly dig more into it.
Yeah.
The cosmetic and e-commerce industry was extremely competitive in India when you started your venture. So what was the idea behind the sugar industries that led to making it a multi-million-dollar company today? And what was the motivation to step in and push through to a more or less saturated industry? It was a very saturated industry by that time.
I think before I come to that, let me, I feel that a lot of you are probably going to, I will come through this answer, but
yeah,
before
sure.
that I took the plunge of becoming an entrepreneur, and back then, this was in 2007 when I graduated from IIT Madras, but it was a tough decision, and everybody I mentioned that 10-15% did not apt, right? Out of them, everybody else would end up either taking up a job or doing MBA. MBA was basically, this idea was to delay the decision of what I want to do with my life, because people who are confused end up doing an MBA. And then people who are super confused after an MBA become consultants, because then they think that we have 5 more years. So yeah, then they think that we have 5 more years doing consulting, different industries, exposure, blah blah blah, to figure out. And at some point, you can delay the decision as much as you want, but at some point you have to take a decision, and then you have to believe in it, and then you have to give it your all, and then you have to be honest with yourself that whether this is working for me or not. And I feel that all of that self-awareness, which I say, I always say this was my BTech in self-awareness, and self-awareness is a superpower. And all of that happened during those 4 years at IIT, because when you come to an institute like IIT, right, you've forever been one of the smarter, most hardworking people growing up, right? So you're used to being the smartest, hardworking, and you're used to knowing that by being smart and hardworking, you can get a lot done, you can succeed. But in the real world, that's not enough, because there are millions of people who are smart and hardworking, and the first place where you realize that hits you home is IIT, right? You come here and then you suddenly realize that, oh, I may have been like king of Wayanad, but here I am, there are like 999 other kings and queens coming from different cities, toppers, and very smart people. They're all working super hard. So hard work is not going to be enough. And I was recently at my IIM Ahmedabad batch reunion, and I started thinking about patterns of those who did like crazy, amazing stuff with their lives. And I think one of the things that has played out over a period of time is moonshots, ability to take big, bold bets. And I feel that during these 4 years, I somehow was able to figure out the fact that the route to any success is through a series of failures. That whole figuring out how to deal with a failure, one after the other failures, and having a system where you fall and then you figure out how to stand up the next day and then show up over and over again. That's what eventually. So I was just telling him that at that time, Shaastra was a startup. And Sarang was like this big established thing, but Shaastra was a startup. And while I was in PR, where there wasn't much work, one of my very good friends, who's by the way now one of the CXOs at OYO, he was the sponsorship core. So spons was very tough because you needed the money. And I remember back making so many call after call, and getting people would hang up on us where we were asking for funding for sponsorship for Shaastra. And finally that one meeting where this company called Computer Associates agreed to give us 5 lakhs at that time, and which was such a big deal because it used to be so stressful that in ICSR we used to be just taking naps and staying up all night because Shaastra is hectic. And I remember it was so stressful that this friend of mine, Ankit Tandon, he was one day in that nap in the middle of the night, he said, get the check. He started sleep talking, and it was, that's what it meant at that time, just getting one check. And I remember that, those 40-50 rejections before that first check from Computer Associates came. And then that played out in my entire entrepreneurial journey exactly the same. There were at least 100 venture capitalists who said no to sugar. But the good thing is, Shastra needed just one Computer Associates, we needed just that one venture capitalist to finally believe in us. But we figured out the fact that there is no way to get to that without going through those failures. And the other thing was around regrets being more painful than any kind of risks. And I remember at that time I used to play inter-IIT badminton. And I was good at badminton, it just worked out. But there was just 24 women per batch at that time. And it was, the girls team really needed women to play multiple sports, and our coach used to keep saying, "Why don't you try basketball? You're tall, you'll be good at it." But I was like, I was so afraid to fail that I always said no to that. And then I remember like there was this thing called Insti Blues. I don't know if you still have it. You still have Insti Blues? Yeah. So I remember Insti Blues was this award for like all rounders, and I did a lot of things in my time here, but I self-rejected myself and never applied for it. And then I remember that whole process of finally seeing the list of people who got Insti Blues and thinking that, oh my God, I mean, I could have probably had a shot at it. And that was the moment when I realized that, like, having regrets of not trying something or rejecting ourselves by, saying that, oh, I'm not going to show up for the McKinsey interview because definitely I'm not getting through my CGPA is too low, or not applying for Insti Blues. When I went to IIM Ahmedabad after those 4 years, I think the one thing that I figured out was that I am really going to be the boldest, most courageous person I know. I'm going to take all the risks. And that included deciding to stand for the elections of the IIM Ahmedabad secretary position, which was like the crazy election that happened here, but for a smaller batch. And it was, one of those things where in a batch of 250 students, I ended up with 7 votes. And I remember like thinking that, Ari, I have more than 7 friends. Like after 4 days after like 4 days and nights of non-stop campaigning, going door to door, I got 7 votes, and that is the kind of leader I have the potential of becoming. But all of that, and like all of those small things and, being bold, trying things but were way out of my comfort zone, always choosing risk over potential regret, is what finally led to that decision of deciding to start up. And of course, it wasn't easy. So, now coming back to the question, I did not have the clarity as a person who graduates from an IIM, having never worked. You obviously don't have the balls to launch a makeup brand, right? I mean, you're talking about an industry where you have Unilever, P&G, L'Oreal, like the world's Fortune 500 companies are investing their energy in this market. So, where do you get the courage? Well, exactly like you get the courage to do, some of these other things, like go for inter-IIT or stand up for elections. You do, you try multiple things. You fail at a lot of things. So I, tried starting a lingerie brand, then an edutech company, then HR tech. None of that worked. And then we started an e-commerce company which we called FabBag, which, by the way, he mentioned FabBag. We shut down FabBag in September because after 10 years of running it, it did not succeed as well. It was one of the 3rd or 4th things that I tried that did. But through that process, I figured out that there is going to be a huge change in the way brands are emerging out of India. There will be brands that are making products perfect for Indian women, and they will get consumed on e-commerce. They will get awareness built through social media. None of these Fortune 500 companies have the wherewithal or the ability to really understand the pulse of young Indian women, because they're the fastest changing consumer that exists globally, because of course, leaving aside maybe a country like Saudi, where of course there's a big change happening, but Indian women are, like we have less than 20% women in workforce in India. In India, the literacy rate for women used to be like 12% lower just about 10 years back. So there are just so many factors, and when you look around, you see how in an IIT, like from a batch which had 5% women, it's now 20% women, right? So you see all of these factors, and then you realize that this is one of those markets where compounding will happen. And while those large FMCG companies are busy looking at market research reports where they're saying, younger women still are making only 12% of our total market size, blah, blah, you are looking at the consumer closely and figuring out, doesn't matter, because a younger woman, a 24-year-old, is consuming 3 to 4 times more product than a 48-year-old. So when in 2022, 65% women will be under the age of 35, this is the market that's going to explode. That is the call we took back in 2015 when the idea of building a brand out of India was considered to be totally stupid because, everybody said that people will only buy brands which are, made in US, made in Europe, made in India. Brands will never be at par with international brands. All of that has changed in the last 7-8 years. And I feel so grateful that somehow we had the conviction and the belief to keep going on. And when you do that, somehow there's this magical thing that happens. It's called compounding. Things start building and compounding, and that's how this market grew. It's exactly like, so I got to know that Shaastra now has sponsorship going in above 1 crore. This was 7 lakhs, 10 lakhs, or some small number, like literally 16, 17 years back. That is 10x growth, which is compounding, right? Because IIT believed that right now there is no market. It's a small tech fest that nobody cares about, and it's never going to be probably as big as Sarang. But year after year, we will invite companies, we will invite colleges, we will keep going at it because potentially it's a no-brainer for an IIT to host a tech fest of the magnitude of a Shaastra. And that compounding actually needs solid belief. And I really believe for all of you, you are really smart, really hardworking, and when I meet people of your generation, I feel that this generation is so much more mature and evolved. The only 2 things I think that will get you to accomplish whatever dreams that you have in mind would be the courage to really take a bet on yourself, the courage to really take those big, bold bets, those big risks. And secondly, believe that, to stay patient around the outcome, because believe that compounding has to come through. I feel that a lot of younger people think about the fact that I will do this thing for 3-4 years and then I will have a lot of money and then I will do my own thing. But when you do that, you're taking away those 3-4 years from the power of compounding, right? And I feel that, while you can never know the right answer, what you want to do, like for instance, I tried an internship at an investment bank and I realized that this is not for me, because what it takes to succeed in an investment bank is being this networking kind of a person, slightly political, all of that. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something else. I tried a B2B company which didn't work because it required hardcore sales, which I didn't want to do, and finally this worked. So if you're honest with yourself and you keep going back saying that, okay, I made this decision, I tried this to my best ability, but this is not for me. There is this concept called product market fit that you hear about in Shark Tank a lot. I feel that there is an even more powerful concept called founder market fit, which is, are you the founder who can really crack this problem and really make it scale? Similarly, I feel that there is a, career fit, like an engineer career fit. Is this the right thing for you, which you would love doing so much that the days when it gets painful and you're not getting rewarded for all the work that you're putting in, you'll still have the courage and the persistence to show up day after day. What is that thing for you? And each of you has a different answer, and nobody can tell you that answer. But definitely operating out of FOMO and seeing what the other is doing will take you to the wrong place, because you have to have the courage to also listen to your inner voice, which will take you to the right place, which is basically saying that what is it that I can be really good at, what is it that I love doing, what is the pain that I will love to go through day after day, year after year. For me, that was building a consumer brand. That's the pain I love going through, just being out there, showing up for our consumers day after day for years. And it did take, till 2 years back, obviously, even though I'm an alum, none of you knew me, right? Because it was, but I was still doing the same thing for the last 15 years. But then something happened and things unlocked. The Indian market opened up and sugar became a large brand. And then of course, very luckily Shark Tank came to India. So entrepreneurship became aspiration. Now I couldn't have planned any of this, but I showed up day after day for those 15 years for that to happen. So I feel that a lot of times just having, having a low goal and hitting it is failure. I don't think having a high goal and not hitting it is failure. Having a low goal and then hitting it over and over again, which I did. I would always, have ambitions where I thought that, okay, ये तो हो ही जाएगा. ITC के लिए internship के लिए बैठे रहते हैं because वो हो ही जाएगा. Having that low goal and hitting it, I thought over and over again, that was probably failure.
So we were talking about the decisions you took in life. So to give you guys a little more context in the field, she graduated from IIM with a package of 1 CR and she turned it down. And she was the youngest ever Indian B school graduate to ever do that. So that was to give you a context of that.
So don't do that. There was some article recently about IIT packages and all going down. So now you know where to go for 1 crore.
So coming back to
and by the way, it was easy to say no to at that time because I was like, oh, this is my passion. I'm gonna go after it. Within 2 years, I was like, I need to play this mistake of my life. Because it was so expensive to live in Mumbai, and even though I had like a house where I was paying just like 5,000 rupees rent, it was just so hard to get by with no funding and not having any salary. And all my friends from IIM, I was like, I got a day 0 job and I turned it down. And people who had day 1, day 2, day 3 jobs, they were like so well off. They were buying houses and every weekend they were partying at Hard Rock Cafe, and I would go there and I would be like, LIITs for 700 rupees, oh my god, I'll pay for it. And then I would I had these very luckily, and that's the other thing, I think one of my biggest regrets from my IITM journey is that, at that time, because women were just 5% and I'm from Delhi, so I would always show up overdressed everywhere. So for me to go talk to a guy, that guy would definitely at night get bumps in his hostel. So I always felt very conscious about going out there and making friends. So only those, people were my friends who had the courage to actually go through those bumps, right? And later on I realized that IIT is that place where any access you take from art, culture, sports, obviously physics, engineering, everything, any access you take, you get like the best people. I mean, our batch had AIR rank 1 also in campus. But you get like the smartest people and you have the ability to make such amazing friends for a lifetime. And we are so busy through those 4 years doing RG. Like trying to So I just want to remind you that you have an opportunity to be friends for life with like 10, 15 of the smartest people you will ever meet in the world. You can co-found companies with them. You can marry them. I know easier for girls than for guys. But I hope Stella Murray still comes to Saram. But so you have the ability to, make like very so the friend of mine who I've had from my IIT days, this one friend who's still one of my closest friends, and yeah, so through those Hard Rock Cafe days, I used to ask him to pay for me, and then I kept telling him that one day I'm going to give you a very big treat. One day I'm going to give you a very big treat. Finally, I was able to, after our first round of funding, after like 10 years of making him pay for everything. But it was hard. So I to say that, like, I took that decision to, not take that offer. And, I remember the bankers used to be like, if you join DB, you will have the ability to walk across the floor and raise $1 million for your startup within 2-3 years of working in this bank. So why would you not take this up, and why would you start up right out of campus? And then I used to think about that yeah, I could have raised that $1 million if I'd worked in DB, and I would have had some savings. But you know, honestly, when I look at all my batchmates who ended up taking those jobs, just like it's easier to say no to something that you've never like had the luxury of, you know, living that grand life. Once you get used to the good things, it becomes that much harder. So I feel that, you know, the friends of mine who finally gave up those high-paying jobs and then started up needed a lot more courage than somebody like me who grew up in a middle-class family, never had like the fancy lifestyle of an investment banker, so never had to feel every single day that there is a very, very high price to pay. Of course, there were those dark days, especially Hard Rock Cafe, but generally it didn't seem as hard. And I finally was able to pay myself a crore a year, like much later in life. Like maybe like, you know, when I talk about it, it probably took more than 12, 13 years to actually get that number, which I gave up. But when you know, when you want to build something which is like 10,000 crore, then you have to wait for that long, because the greatest of rewards actually come from the greatest of risks, and it does have a price. Sorry, I'm totally derailing your.
Okay, we are enjoying it actually. So coming to your company Sugar, Sugar is popular for its extremely inclusive ecosystem, especially in India where the workplace is generally male dominated. Sugar sets a very good example by building up a safe and inclusive environment for women. Even you as a young entrepreneur found your way through the startup culture that has been dominated by men. Can you share your experiences and observations on how the industry has evolved in terms of diversity and inclusivity throughout the years?
I think except IITs where the number's gone from 5 to 20%, there's no evolution. It's still, I mean, you know, if you look at VC funded businesses, it's still less than 2% of the capital goes to women. And there are a lot of reasons. And of course, you know, to their credit, one of the reasons is that when you're a man evaluating a business which has lipsticks, how do you figure out the difference between, you know, a lipstick that lasts like 12 hours versus 4 hours, right? You're like, what's the difference? What's the big deal? So that's to their credit. But I think in India, when I grew up, I didn't have enough role models. So the great thing now is that young women have a lot of role models. I think on Shark Tank as well last season, 48% of the pitchers were actually women. And I feel that, I mean, of course, you know, the bunch have a lot of exposure, but I still think about those little girls sitting in the smallest of towns, and so many of them are now talking about being ambitious and being, you know, having role models. I feel that that is the single biggest thing. So in our organization, we have 70% women, and that's primarily, of course, it is because it is a cosmetics business, so it's easier to hire women, but it's also because of the fact that at every layer you have role models. And I do imagine that, you know, within the next 10 years, when I come back to an IIT, it probably would be closer to a 40 to 50%. And that is the day where we probably have to stop thinking about having awards which celebrate women entrepreneurs or having separate lists for women 40, under 40, etc. But till then, I feel that, you know, all of you have to put in that effort to have role models at different levels. And I'm sure a lot of you will found companies, you will realize why women are also exceptional in leadership and a lot of roles. But I think it's, I mean, you know, this question probably doesn't make sense for, unfortunately, I would say about 80% of this room, so we'll skip it beyond that.
So the incorporation of artificial intelligence in various industries has been on the rise, and it is also expected to bring major transformations in the skincare industry as well. What are your thoughts on the integration of AI in the cosmetic industry, and how do you see it impacting the development and personalization of cosmetic products in the future? Can you provide some examples on how companies in the industry are currently utilizing AI in their operations?
I think there's AI on the demand side, but not so much on the supply side yet. I think supply side, because of the fact that cosmetics. I'm not about skincare. We're not skincare. We're in color cosmetics, and color cosmetics is a scale business. So our each batch currently, for it to actually be affordable for Indian women, you make like 100,000 units in a batch. So it's not as much of personalization yet. But on the demand side, there's a lot of personalization happening, and there's a lot of AI that's getting used to have products and communication that is tailor-made to every single consumer. There's a lot of AR, by the way, so you can sit in your room in your hostel, open the app, and try any lipstick shade or your skin tone. All of this wasn't possible, and there is a lot of. I feel that in makeup is a category where education really matters, because Indian women still have like a complicated relationship with it. So in just making that experience of trying it out on yourself and making sure you're not doing stupid, because a lot of women have this problem, I put makeup, I look stupid. So for all of that, I think AR is really helping.
So coming to the Shark Tank part, as a panel member of Shark Tank India, what criteria and key factors do you consider when evaluating a startup's potential for success in the market during the pitch process? And how do you assess a startup's likelihood of success?
Thank God you came to that. Somebody slept off in the audience waiting for that Shark Tank question. I definitely invest more in founders than businesses. So it helps if you're from an IIT. I'm just kidding.
Of course.
Nobody's recording this, right? So really, the only reason it helps from IIT is that I feel that IIT is really this place where all the dangal happens, right? If you survive those 4 years and you come out an evolved human being, with all the pressures that comes with being here and all the competition, all the aggression, I feel that you definitely have the persistence to be an entrepreneur. So I feel that the persistence, which is how many times have you failed and figured out a way to get up again, whether it is in like some random stuff you did in your college where you tried to raise funds for Shaastra, to standing for elections and losing, to like showing up for quiz competitions and all of those. I feel so the people who gone through failures, I find them to have the ability to persist. And the one thing I am certain of is every single person who graduates from a good college underestimates the number of years it takes to build large businesses. And I feel that any single person in this room, if they are okay to commit 20 years of their life to something they are really deeply passionate about, and they'll be able to build something world class. Every single person in this room. But the only thing I want to figure out is if you are the person who can stay committed to something for 20 years. There is this entrepreneurship is this dichotomy where you are every day so impatient to get things done because you're moving fast. So you have so much impatience around getting things done, but you still have to be patient with the outcome. And the only way that can happen is to build a very large vision for yourself, which can take you 15, 20, 30 years to accomplish, and then go after that day after day. Now that I feel is the single biggest decider. I don't think in terms of ability, there's a single person in this room who has that. It is just about whether you're ready to show up every day, whether you're ready to be persistent. So that's the biggest, of course, criterion. The second, of course, is market. As an investor, the way the logic works for these early stage businesses is that you invest in like 10 companies, 2-3 of them will actually end up returning the money. The rest of them, you would never get an exit, whether they shut down or whatever happens to them. So those 2-3 of them, it's important that the market is growing. So it could be a small market, like cosmetics for young women was in 2015. But it has to be growing. I wouldn't invest in a declining market generally, even if it's large. So that's the second thing. And then third, of course, is more execution things like I mentioned, gross margin and business fundamentals. But I think the biggest, I think 90% of all our decisions are made on the entrepreneur. You really bet on the jockey, not the horse. And the horse can change, but the jockey is important. Like you put a Lewis Hamilton in any car, he'll still be podium, right? So that's the thing.
So, we know the pandemic had a very big hit on many companies worldwide. So, how did Sugar manage to maintain its workforce and production levels during the pandemic? And despite the economic challenges faced by many companies, what strategies did the company implement to minimize losses and keep the morale of the employees high?
So, firstly, we didn't maintain the production levels. It was March 2020. We did a revenue of, sales of, I think about 16, 17 crores. April 2020, we did zero. It was actually a big fat zero because it wasn't an essential category. So all our stores were shut. All our warehouses were shut. And everybody was staying at home figuring out, ये pandemic 10 दिन चलेगा या 20 दिन? Nobody thought it's going to be 2 years, but it really at that time was just living on hope. And but I feel that it's, in an entrepreneurial journey, the only certain thing is after every high, there will be a low. And it just keeps going on. The good thing is that none of the highs are as, grand as they seem. And because India is a very competitive market, you accomplish something, somebody else will come and start, catching up with you. And none of the lows are as bad as they seem. So luckily for us, we spoke to the team, we were very honest with the team. Guys, we have 2,400 people whose salaries we need to pay and the revenue is zero. Given the money in the bank, within 4 months, we'll be out of money. So what can we do? And people started brainstorming and figuring out, like, all the sales girls used to sit in stores, they started WhatsApp calling consumers and trying to get them to shop on our app. Like for the first time, we got core offline consumers who never shopped online to shop from us on WhatsApp. The team actually came forward and said that we're okay to take pay cuts. So what we did was we offered like a company-wide program where you could take a pay cut against which you would get 2 times ESOPs. And as luck would have it, by in 6 to 7 months, we were back to our pre-COVID numbers. Those were very tough months, but within 12 months of the pandemic, we actually raised a round where all of those people who had given up their salaries actually had the option to do an exit at 4 times the amount that they gave up. So I feel that, like I said, that it's just like the crisis as an entrepreneur is like part of your life. It's like basically morning of Shaastra, you realize that the biggest sponsor's check is bounced. That happens every day as an entrepreneur. So you have to like just prepare for it over and over again.
It's actually very interesting. We never know what's going to happen in life. Even you are a mother of 2 sons and you have that to take care as well on the side. So can you share some strategies that you have found helpful for maintaining a healthy work-life balance? And how you prioritize your responsibilities both at work and at home? And what tips would you give to the other working mothers looking to do the same?
Again, I think let's keep this for Q&A if it is relevant to the audience. I'm looking at like a room full of 22-year-old boys. I'm wondering, working mothers वाला tips लेके लोग कहाँ जाएंगे? But I do have something to say to the boys. Okay, it is too early to give this advice, but someday your better halves will thank me for it. It is really like companies after companies are trying to make it easier for women in workforce and to help women succeed at work. But the biggest problem is not at workplace. The biggest problem is at homes. Statistics are that your colleagues, like educated women who have a master's degree, an undergrad degree, also in India do 6 times more household work than their better halves. And the only reason I've actually been able to accomplish anything in my entire life is that I have a spouse who picks up 50% of the responsibilities at home. And in 2027 or 28 or whenever you guys end up getting married, this will not be an option. So please don't look at, in this one aspect, please do not look at your parents as the benchmark, because the world is changing. And for, if you want to be kind, and if you want to get married to somebody who's equal, who's ambitious, who has dreams and aspirations, and you don't want to be that person who, any ambitious girl doesn't even want to consider, then you have to be prepared to put in 50% of the work at home. And for women, who you get married to does end up becoming your biggest career decision, because if you're going to end up with somebody who doesn't have that respect for you at home and is not ready to put an equal share of responsibility, then just think about it before making that not life choice, it's a career choice.
Thank you, Manu. That was very inspiring. With that,
I'm not sure it was inspiring or threatening. But for the future girls of India, I don't mind threatening these bunch of boys. I think they can handle it.
With that, we come to the end of the fireside chat session. Now we can open up the questions to the audience.
कुछ लोग तो बहुत एक्साइटेड है.
A little nervous. Let me take some. So,
Breathe. Long breath out. One second, 10 rupees is not a small amount. Make sure you get that 10 rupees from him.
question मैं छोड़ दूँगा.
For like having the courage to stand up, at least 10 rupees लेके जाना.
yeah, Saru. You told more about the transformation in IITM. How transformational was IIT? And the second question is, you went through a lot of failures. So peeping into hard rock while your batchmates are enjoying. So you need the mental courage to go about it. So how did you? And one more thing. So tell that we love Aman Bhaiya, Namita.
I will tell all of them. As long as record to nahi ho raha na, you don't want me to tell Ashneer, it's fine.
ये तो पक्का रिकॉर्ड होगा.
Please don't put it on social.
सामने ही तो रिकॉर्ड हो रहा है इतना बड़ा.
What was your question? Now I am nervous. What was your question?
और 10 रुपए.
Matrix the number one.
Transformation was
I am Ahmedabad. Is there anybody here considering MBA? कि MBA has become irrelevant now. It's become irrelevant. Okay, whatever post-graduation. So in my case, it was, I feel that in IIT, I spent a lot of time figuring out what I wanted to do in my life. And so when I went into IIM Ahmedabad, I had so much clarity, right? So like the basics that I said, right? Like when I say that I, regret not going out there and making friends with the smartest and the people I had respect for in IIT, and that was a big regret. I went to IIM Ahmedabad and changed that. So I met all my co-founders of all my businesses at IIM Ahmedabad, and my husband and the father of my 2 children at IIM Ahmedabad. And I feel that I was very clear about the people I wanted to spend time, because at the end of the day, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So from the perspective of having access to the best people who actually raise you, because you spend time with people who are ambitious, people who are great at something, they'll raise your bar every single day, and it doesn't matter what your trajectory is, as long as There's a 0.0001% improvement on day 2 over day 1, and you do that over and over again, rest of it compounding takes care of, right? And you will be phenomenal, right? So that thing around saying that spend time with fabulous people, I got a chance to do that because luckily at that time IIM Ahmedabad had some of the most fabulous people. I specifically went to IIM Ahmedabad because it had a phenomenal program on entrepreneurship. Of course, like all tragic crisis in life, the year that I went, that program got cancelled. But I managed to catch the professor who used to run that program to do a 2-day mentorship for our batch. So I was very clear about what I was seeking. But honestly, the two things you end up learning the most from an IIM, in case somebody is considering, is Microsoft Excel, very important in life. Very, very important in life. And I'm honest, I don't know if you guys have exposure to that at IIT, but we never had. And that I learned in IIM Ahmedabad. And second is, of course, whatever you choose, you want to become a politician, a sportsperson, a CEO, or a scientist, the one life skill everybody needs is to be able to communicate your ideas to a group of people. Because without that, no matter how sharp you are, you'll never be able to get the buy-in of a lot of people to support you and to join you in your mission. That is the second thing that I learned at Ahmedabad. Like literally, there was a specific course which I very clearly remember called Managerial Communication, where I figured out that when you get on a stage, what do you do with your damn hands? Because you get on a stage and you're like, put your hand here, here, here. Like, now, of course, my hands move too much, so I should have toned that down a bit. But yeah, that's the thing I credit IIM Ahmedabad the most for. Talking about mental courage, I feel that it was really hard, but I, over a period of time, figured out a mechanism. I call it like really crying it out, and it really works for me. Like whenever there's a setback, and sometimes I feel that probably it's easier for maybe it's a gender thing, I don't know, but it's probably easier for women to bounce back, because the moment where you figure out that you have a process around dealing with failures, right? So every single time there was a VC rejection, like I shared a story, like when you're doing venture capitalist pitches, there's this final check in the box round that's called the IC round. It's called the investment committee. Nobody you meet, no founder you meet would have ever had an IC rejection, which is basically your final, like a check in the box where they say, हाँ ठीक है, we're all agreeing, check ले लो, because some partner puts your case forward and then everybody just says yes. We're one of the only companies in India that had 2 IC rejections, right? And we've had an investor who's currently on our cap table that rejected us 4 times before they invested in us. A very, very marquee fund. And now we have the best funds in India on our cap table, some of the best partners, but so many of them said no over and over again. And but we believed in something. And so I would just every time that would happen, I would just have these 2-3 hours of a breakdown. And and I built a process around it. And next day somehow I'd be like, okay, I have to do this. I can't give up. And it helps that I'm a marathoner. And for me, for marathoners, there's a term called "do not quit." And it's the same thing for entrepreneurship, right? Failure is not getting rejected. Failure is not having bad numbers, having people leave your team, having your product fail. None of that is failure. Failing is finally quitting for an entrepreneur. And I did not give myself that option. And yeah, luckily I also had a lot of support from a lot of people who said that, it's just around the corner. The consumers, sometimes you feel really, on your dark days, you look at photos of your consumers who are giving these rave reviews, and you feel like there's a difference you're making to somebody's life, and you hang on to those small things, you celebrate those small milestones, you see the kind of ESOP wealth some of those people, there are people who joined us at 15,000 rupees, are now have equity that is in crores. Those small things you look at to feel better on your dark days, I guess. But I think everybody has to figure out their own. But if you if you think you've not failed in the last 30 days, and you don't have a system that helps you deal with those failures, then you're definitely in for some trouble getting out of IITM. Not only if you want to be an entrepreneur, anything that you do. If you're somebody who's been somehow very charismatically avoiding failures, boy, you're gonna have to learn it the hard way once you graduate. So. Wow, okay, 6 hands, not a single girl.
Hello.
Okay, you have a mic, so you, you win.
So I'm Abhishek from Civil Third Year,
Yeah.
and being CEO of a company involves doing some of the most trivial tasks, right? And like keeping yourself on the track for like 10-15 years and making sure that you are doing those tasks each and over and over again. And still confident that someday I will succeed. So how you used to deal with this self-doubt that I'm not progressing as much as friends are doing on each and every day?
Stop being friends with those people. Like I said, it was very hard. But I think that's, you know, as long as, so I've gone through many years of a lot of self-doubt. In fact, when my, you know, before Fab Bag, when my last company shut down, I was at a point where I remember having this conversation with my husband saying that, you know, I feel I'm not meant to be an entrepreneur, because all successful entrepreneurs are these charismatic people like Steve Jobs, Richard Branson. I have no charisma. I'm not a genius. I am not this visionary who can walk into this room and sway the, you know, everybody into believing that the iPhone is the next biggest thing. So what am I going to do? And then I said that, okay, maybe I should finally start looking for a job. And after 5 years of being an entrepreneur, you are like, what kind of job will somebody give me? Because I've done everything from jhadu pocha to hiring to, you know, sales, but I don't have a specialization. So I started hatching this plan. That time Starbucks was trying to come to India, and I was like, I should apply for a job at Starbucks. Maybe I'll get a 50,000 rupee job. You know, it was, so I'm just saying that it's not that you don't have self-doubts. I've gone through those really negative conversations. Luckily, I, you know, had people around me, including some of these professors who, you know, from Professor Jhunjhunwala to Professor Handa, who believed in me, and they said that, you know, they told me that same thing, that the, you know, the access to success is through a series of failure. And then of course I read a lot of books. You know, if anybody over here wants to become an entrepreneur, the first book you should read is Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. It's a fabulous account of how over the last 30-40 years it hasn't changed the, you know, the struggle you have to go through in your journey to become an entrepreneur. And then of course a lot of self-talk, right? I had this, you know, I used to I have this thing stuck on my wall. It was this, it read, फिर खोल पंख ए परिंदा, उड़ान अभी बाकी है, जमीन नहीं है मंजिल तेरी, अभी पूरा आसमान बाकी है. So some of these small things, you know, they seem cheesy, but they help. You know, you just have to figure out, you know, those things that you do. And luckily at that time, the one thing that I did, you know, when you have low self-esteem, you need something going right in your life. So I took to running like nobody's business. I went and did this ultra marathon in South Africa. I mean, why do you do these things? The reason you do these things is that as human beings, we need, you know, we need some level of spark, happiness to keep going. And so celebrating those small milestones, having something outside of work, which is either your family or a passion which is outside of work to help you get over those dark days. I really can tell you, every single person in this room, the best way to get over a really miserable, depressing situation is to go work out. Go for a run, go lift weights, you know, play a sport. It just, I don't know, there is science behind it, I'm sure, because, you know, at the end of the day, it's just hormones. But that helped. So, yeah, I just figured out a way to not give up and somehow stay the course. And I feel that each of us have to figure out our own ways to do that.
Yes, we can have one last question.
From a girl.
Yeah, from a girl.
Good evening. Where which hostel are you? I'm a day scholar. What? Life's biggest learning comes from living in a hostel. You have to convince your parents to let you stay in the hostel. on this. Ma'am, I had a question like, I have done a couple of internships, like I did sales, marketing, I did software engineering, and then I landed in a business analyst role. But then what I have is that in India, the stereotype is that women actually are pickles at home. They like making pickles and maybe paper business and all that. Maybe because of the thing that the girl is made to play with the Barbie doll than car, maybe fire.
Research part में काम
Car. So what is the question? Why do you produce next Elon Musk next,
Research part में ही होंगे.
someone like Steve Cook in the tech world as a woman? The women in the house are mostly in finance, they handle finance, but they're not coming outside and making it on. So that one You tell me, you become Tim Cook and do it. Why are you waiting for somebody else to show it? So, I first, by the way, become a hostler. Don't do this day scholar. Because the entire college is not about what you study in the classroom. That's the only education you get as a day scholar. College is about living by yourself and taking crazy risks, which you can't as a day scholar. Right? Coming to your question, I think all of that is going to change. There are a lot of women from IIT Madras who are running some agri-tech, robotics, all kinds of businesses. And one of them is going to make it big. Like, who would have thought that right now, currently, if you look at the highest net worth of a startup founder, who's that in India? Highest net worth? Nobody knows. No, it is not Ritesh. It is Falguni Nayyar, the CEO of Nykaa, who has the highest net worth. So, like, if you ask me this question 24 months ago, why can't women become rich? We wouldn't have had this example of Falguni Nayyar, right? She is richer in terms of net worth and the value that she's created. And not even talking about, the peak that it was at the time of the IPO. Right now is higher than any of the unicorn founders who are men, right? And I'm sure right now there's somebody working in some part of, the world who's gonna be your next Elon Musk or Tim Cook. And it could be you if you were to join hospital. Now Adil will decide.
It's really
Wrap up. Adil's boss has said wrap up. He's looking very angry. Picture, yeah, picture. We definitely have to do a picture.
We'll take a picture at the end. Let me complete. We're getting very late, okay? She has a plan.
Do you have something with him? A way to convince him? He's the decision maker, I think.
Raj says no. So thank you to Vineeta for the really fast feedback. I'm sure that everybody enjoyed it a lot.
Oh, कर दो.
We thank Vetri for being our gifting sponsor. I would now like to invite our core Pranav and our head Raj Gopal to present a memento and a gift hamper to our speaker.
अच्छा यही है अच्छा ये एंकर.
Please remain seated for a few minutes. The door will be open soon. We request you to go to ICSR after this for the industry insight talk by Nomura, and refreshments will be provided. We also have motorbike show happening outside CLT starting in a while. And tomorrow we have the Honorable Governor of Tamil Nadu, Thiru R.N. Ravi.
Sorry, I love the evolution that IITM has gone through. When we were your age, when somebody said refreshments, we were out of the door before you could read this.
देखते हैं कल का. अरे गवर्नर बहुत सही है मतलब वो पूरा भीड़ गए स्टेट.
So we have our Honorable Governor Thiru R.N. Ravi.
फिर आएंगे. किसी को इंटरेस्ट नहीं लगा मेरे के भी वैसे फ्री हो तो बता रहा ठीक है खत्म हो गया कि बच्चा बच्चा नहीं दो शुरू नहीं खुलेगा तो वो नहीं बाहर मैं बंद कर दूँ हाँ भाई ये सही है क्या कर रहा है खुद ही बोल रहे अरे पंडित में ऑटोग्राफ खुद ही पूछ रही है अच्छा उनको अच्छा लगता होगा
Oh yeah, I roll up to the party with the handle of Bacardi and I pass it off to